Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about tips for Instagram for artists. If you would like to grow as an artist and you can't afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof: critiques, tutorials, and professional development. We're going to be reviewing two Instagram accounts today. The first one is Varun Tulsian. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. And we are also looking at an Instagram by Manavzi S. So we're actually going to get started with Varun. And I'm just going to give you some background information on Varun in their artist statement, which, by the way, is in the video description below if you would like to read the full statement. So Varun explains that they're 23 years old, they're living in the north of India, and right now they are doing a bachelor's course in biology, but it's not where their heart is. So Varun says, I'm really inclined towards drawing cartoons from my childhood. I love movies by Pixar, Ghibli, Dreamworks. I think animation and cartoons will always have a place in my art. And Varun is asking, I want to know if I show potential. And if I do, where do I stand on the spectrum of artists? Am I a beginner who needs a decade or more of practice to even achieve just a middling level of skill? Am I creative enough, or do I just copy reference? Varun explains, I think I have a strong voice of my own, but I'd like to know if an objective person sees that in my art. Well, Varun, it's great that you're seeking out that feedback, because I think oftentimes we do very much get stuck in our own heads, and it is pretty much impossible to be objective about your work. Let's just start at the top with your profile. And what I typically do for these critiques is I don't look at the Instagrams very extensively in advance, because I want to show my first reaction without a ton of information on the artist. So I would say you might want to rethink your handle, because the left phalange, I'm an anatomy dork, so I know what that is. But I think if you want to have an art account that hopefully you want to use professionally someday, you want to either use your name, so it's very straightforward, or have the word art in there. Definitely rethink that, because your handle can make a big difference. Some people, their handle is excessively complicated and I have trouble remembering it. So that's very useful long term. And I would also say that it's good you have India, you have your pronouns here, and you have your personal account link. So I'm just going to click on that and see. I would say, Varun, it's not necessary to have your personal account, because the thing is, especially if your personal account is private, it's not really relevant to anybody except your friends, and your friends probably already know what your personal handle is, because this section, it's really important real estate. Like, you only want to put things there if they're actually going to inform people. So for example, your interest in animation and cartoons, that's something that can go in your profile. You can say a little bit of something about what media you work in. And so I would work on that profile. I would also say your profile picture's fine, but my issue with that is that the cropping is a little bit strange. So I would either crop in a lot more, so it's a full circle, or I would get a different photo, because I think that it's a little bit awkward to have the vertical rectangle within a circle. All right, let's go down and look at your highlights. And I would say at first glance, there are two things that really stand out to me. The first one is that every single highlight has an exclamation point. I know it sounds picky, but I noticed that, and it's a little odd. I don't know if it's just in the US, but it makes you sound a little bit overly eager in a way that I think sometimes can sound a little bit desperate. Like, I say to students, listen, when you're writing a cover letter, you're applying for a job, cut back on those exclamation points, because I've seen that a lot in student letters where just every other sentence is an exclamation point. It just is a little bit too much. And Seven Angelic is saying, why does Carl Sagan have his own bubble? That was the next thing I was going to say was, this is an art account. Why is Carl Sagan here? And it seems a little bit random. So I'm just click on that and see what that brings up. Okay, so Carl Sagan's birthday, one of my favorite people in the world. Okay, so there's information here about Carl Sagan. I don't know that this has to be a highlight, Varun, because the thing is, you really want your art account to just be art. If you're really into Carl Sagan and it relates to your work somehow, maybe your work is about science, then I think it would be relevant. But I think right now it's a little bit out of place. Let's take a look at your other Instagram highlights. So we're going to start out with doodles. I think this is too much text. I think that unfortunately people on social media just have no patience. I think for a lot of people, if it's beyond 2 sentences, you end up getting too long, didn't read. Like, I think this is fine. This amount of text is enough that somebody would actually take the time to read it. I think this is fine, but just watch the quantity of text. I think in a text caption, that's a little bit different, but I think in a story, people are tapping through really, really quickly, which is obscene because stories don't last that long, but people have no attention span. Tell me in the chat, who here is horrified by their lack of attention span on social media? I am. I mean, I find myself doing things on social media and I say to myself, really, Clara? You can't wait an extra second? It's too much for you to tap. And so just keep that in mind, that even people like me who feel that they should know better still do stuff like that. I would also say you could probably divide up this highlight. I mean, there's a lot of images in this highlight. So the likeliness that somebody's actually going to take the time to go through all of these is fairly low. So you could categorize things. For example, if you want to do it by media, if you want to do it by subject, I just know that I wouldn't bother to go through. I'd probably go through about 5 and then I would probably stop. So let's go to the next highlight here. Okay, I would also say you probably want to avoid swearing because if it's on your personal account, that's fine. I mean, that's your friends and family and stuff like that. But I just think on a personal account on an art account, where you're trying to show that you're an artist and you want to improve, it just is not a good look. Tell me in the chat, when you see swears on a social media account or like a Facebook page or something, and it's meant to be somebody who is doing like art or something. I'm not talking about a personal account, but does that turn you off or do you not care? I'm curious. For me, it's a little bit of a turn off because it just seems a little bit unprofessional. So keep that in mind. Okay, so let's move down and take a look at your post. And so let's start out with some of your questions, Varun. So you're saying you have a lot of interest in cartoons, animation. I would really recommend, Varun, if you have not seen this stream where I interviewed Janice Chun, she's worked at South Park and Cartoon Network, and I talked to her about what it takes to be a pro animator, what types of skills you need, what's involved when you're working at a big studio like that. And then the second stream I would take a look at is this stream that I did with Alex Kiesling, who is the freelance editorial illustrator. And he talks a lot about development of your work stylistically, how to work as a freelancer. So those streams are both, I think, very relevant to what you want to talk about. And so you're saying here you want animation cartoons to be a place in your work. I see animation, I see cartoons in here. I don't really see animation. I mean, it's fine if you don't. I would just say if animation is something that you want to start dipping your toes into, there's a lot of like really simple animation processes. And we have a bunch of tutorials here on Art Prof. I mean, if I can do an animation tutorial, it means that anybody can, because I have no experience in animation. So you might want to start to think about doing that, because if that's an area that you want to do, you don't have to like produce a big film. Like just start out experimenting with animation, because I do find that with character design, that oftentimes people design characters, but they don't really know anything about how the characters are actually going to be used in the context of animation. Like Jordan McCracken Foster, who has done a lot of character design, he has said to me in the past, listen, if you're doing a character design, you really need to think about, do I really want to put a complicated logo on the t-shirt of the character? Do I really want to put a checkered pattern? Because if you're an animator, you got to draw that t-shirt logo over and over and over again. And so that's something you might want to think about, Varun, when you're designing characters, because that actually is part of the process. So this is interesting. Amer says, swearing depends on the artist. I get turned off by swearing from somebody like Jana Breik, but if it's Beeple or someone like that, it's part of their charm. So I guess one way to think about it is, for some artists, that is part of their brand. But the thing is, if you're not very well known like Beeple, it's not really something you can get away with unless you really start to brand yourself in that way. Johnny says any bad language is a big turnoff. And Soyton says, I'm not offended by swearing, but you're going to turn a lot of people off. So that's the thing, is some people don't care, as we've seen in the stream. Some people think it's fine if the context makes sense, but you do have people who just are like, ugh, that's not very professional looking. So I would keep that in mind. So I'm scrolling through the general Instagram right now, and just to give everybody an overview. And so here's a question that Varun is asking. I want to know if I show potential. My feeling about potential, anybody can have potential. That's my feeling. Tell me if you agree. Some people may not think that. Some people may say, nope, there's some people on the planet who are hopeless. You have no potential. Don't even try. I don't believe that, because I went to art school with a lot of people, and there was a wide range. I mean, there were people who could draw circles around me. There were people who really were not that skilled, and there's everybody in between. But you know something? Working really hard and having a passion and being persistent, that goes a really long way. And it's not always the people who can draw circles around you that do the best. I mean, Jordan is a great example. I mean, when he came into my freshman drawing class, and I've said this to him before, he was not the most skilled student in the class, but he worked so hard, and he still does. And he has such a strong vision for what he wants to do. And he really, really learned the skills that he needed. So I would say, Varun, it's not that you have potential or you don't. It's more, what are you really willing to invest into this? Because being an artist is hard, and it takes a crazy amount of work, because it's just a really competitive field. I mean, you think about how many people out there want to do cartoons and animation, want to work at Pixar. I mean, it's millions of people that want to do that. So you're up against a lot of numbers, and that's really a big issue, that is just super competitive. And so Varun says, where do I stand on the spectrum of artists? Am I a beginner who needs a decade or more of practice to even achieve just a middling level of skill? I would say that statement alone is not even accurate, because progress is very specific to the artist. I mean, if you really work hard and you target your weaknesses and you have some guidance, which we'll give to you here at Art Prof in the Discord and also in our streams, it shouldn't take a decade if you really, really work hard and you spend some time in it. And I wouldn't even say, 10 years to get to a middling level of skill. Again, it's like, it's not that, you're doomed. It's just, let's just see where you are. And then I can tell you, okay, here are the things you really need to work on. Because I think a lot of the issue with people in terms of developing their skill set is more so that they're not willing to confront their weaknesses. I think a lot of people would much rather do things that they're already good at. But the thing is, if you want to improve, you have to target the things that you're not good at, and it's not fun oftentimes to work on skills that you're not good at. Tell me in the chat, who here knows they need to confront their weaknesses? Is confession time. But you don't do it a lot because it's like, oh, that's really hard. I mean, I feel the same way about working out. Like, I know I have spaghetti arms, okay? I have no arm strength. And yet, when I go to the gym, when I used to go to the gym, I never wanted to work on my arms because I was like, I don't want to do that. On the other hand, I'm not a professional athlete, so things are a little bit different for me. But I think it's more about what are you really willing to learn? And it takes a certain amount of humbleness to do that. Like, I talked to Jordan, and he has been doing recently a lot of these copies of digital paintings because he always says to me, listen, I'm not as advanced in painting. It's a weakness of mine. I'm much better at doing line. And yet he's spending so much time painting because he knows it's a weakness. And so that's what you need to do, Varun, is just make like a list. What is my list of weaknesses? What are the things that I really can get better at to be an artist? Good advice from W.C. Lee, practice with a purpose. What is the goal of the particular practice you want to improve, and concentrate on that during the practice? Yeah, because you can draw a lot, but you can mindlessly draw. I do that when I practice. Well, I've been practicing a lot of oboe lately, but when I did practice a lot of oboe, there's a really big difference between working on a concerto and just la la la, play whatever. It's a very different thing. And so you have to think about, okay, what are some of the things that I want to work on? Melissa says, I think Varun should also avoid adding Instagram filters on top of artworks. Maybe it's less so for his recent posts. I would agree. I think you're much better off just taking a good quality photo, because filters really, I think people recognize them. You can look usually at a photo and go, oh, it's that filter. And then it sort of ruins the image for a lot of people. And so, Varun, I would really recommend that you watch our stream on how to photograph your artwork, because the thing about your Instagram is that the photography, there's a wide range. Like, you have some photos that are fine, but you have some, like, for example, this one, I can see that the lighting is very uneven. So on the left-hand side, this is very dark. Here it's very light. And that makes it very hard for me to really see the artwork accurately, which, if you want to work professionally, is very important. Gargi said, I learned this from Art Prof. Talent aside, it is sheer perseverance, openness to learning, and taking risks and techniques that are going to help me. I was told as a kid that I had zero talent in arts. This whole talent thing, come on. It bothers me so much because it does send this message to a lot of people. Oh, if you don't have it, give up. And I'm like, what is this? Is this a gene we're born with? I mean, according to science, I have not seen that yet. So I would just say, do not worry about that aspect of yourself. I want to give a shout out to Cyber Shadow Moon. Thank you so much for the super sticker. We greatly appreciate your support. Any amount of support that you can give to Art Prof makes a difference. It has a real impact. So that way we never have to set up a paywall for our site. Now, if I scroll through your Instagram, Varun, the image that really pops out to me is this one. This one's really different than everything else that is on your site. Tell me in the chat, do you guys agree with me that this piece, number one, stands out, and number two is just vastly different than everything else? Because there's a couple things. I mean, just in terms of media, most of your work is pencil, a lot of pen. And here, I believe this is digital. Okay, I added the red background digitally to my charcoal drawing of Snape in an attempt to achieve a sort of cool, eerie contrast. Spilling of the background into the portrait seems to have worked too. So the first thing, Varun, is this is a very complete, resolved artwork. I don't look at this and think it's remotely unfinished. It's just so much bolder. A lot of the other images, they don't really leap out because it's so much pencil. And right now, the way you're using the pencil doesn't really have a very dramatic value range. Like a lot of your pencil drawings are pretty gray. I don't know exactly what type of art supplies you're using, but I recommend that you get some pencils that are really soft, 9B, 6B, because if you don't have a soft pencil, there are certain pencils that only get so dark. There's nothing to do with you. It's just the material is inherently like that. And then the other thing is that the color is just so bold. A lot of the other images, like this one, has some color, but it's pretty limited. It's also very fragmented. It's also a master copy of Van Gogh. And so that's another thing, is I know it's not your original work. I know it's a master copy. Now, master copies are very helpful. I'm not saying don't do them. I'm just saying that this really jumps out as being finished, very different, and also original. Now, if I go through your artist statement, one of the things that you ask is, am I creative enough, or do I just copy reference? So let's go through the Instagram and see what percentage of the work is original and what percentage of the work is actually copied, okay? Now, this post, I would just take a moment to say that I don't think this needs to be a video. Tell me in the chat, do you guys like seeing videos on Instagram? Because my feeling is that most videos I see on Instagram don't need to be videos. Like this one, your video doesn't actually show any movement until a couple seconds in. And so actually my first reaction to this post was, oh, this is a video, but why is nothing happening? So you want that movement to happen immediately. If you don't get that in, people will leave or they'll just be very confused. Tom G is asking, should artists curate Instagram content and remove older work as they change? You can. Depends on the artist, but I sometimes will do an Instagram sweep where I'll just go through my Instagram and I'll say, okay, maybe this post didn't perform very well, or, you know, something, this post is not really relevant to who I am anymore. My suggestion, though, is if you do an Instagram sweep, don't delete the post, archive them, because you might change your mind later. And then it's really easy to bring it back. Whereas if you delete it, that's it. And then also you can't control the order. Like it will no longer be an old work. It'll be a new post. And that's very different. Nana says about the red artwork, the red piece feels most professional with much thought behind it and an impressive use of negative space. Yeah. And you know what's cool about it is I knew it was Snape. And yet we're only seeing a sliver of the face. And the rest of it is just this really overwhelming, bold red that I think is beautifully done. So I would say, Varun, that's my favorite piece on your entire Instagram. Atre Fabian says, is it true that red catches the eye the most on Instagram? Which color catches the eye the most to click on for people? I think it really depends on the color and how it's presented. Like this one, there's a lot of red. I mean, probably 80% of this image is red. It's also very saturated. So in this case, that is what happens. The other thing, though, is one of the reasons it jumps out is because most of the stuff on Varun's Instagram is pencil work. So if Varun had every post looked like that red image, it probably wouldn't stand out very much. So actually, a lot of it, I believe, is context. Actually, Fabian says, I don't think all videos are interesting enough, but it can be nice to do, especially reels, so that your account gets pushed by Instagram. My feeling is that, yeah, they're a great option, but you know what, you guys? It's really hard to shoot a video that's not terrible. Tell me in the chat, do you think it's easy to shoot a good, effective video, or have you tried and then went, yeah, this is harder than I thought? Because good video is really, really challenging. So Gargi says, I like seeing close-up videos, the ones in which the artist peels the tape off the sides of their artwork. Yeah, videos that show the palette knife plunging into the acrylic paint or peeling the tape or varnishing, that type of one action movement tends to be the type of video that gets a lot of traction on Instagram. So if you're going to do it, that's probably what I would say you should work on. Now, to answer the question, am I creative enough? I would say if I go through the Instagram, the vast majority of it is copied. Like here we have Dexter's Laboratory. These look like they're probably copied from photos. Yeah, this is Henry Cavill. I'm guessing that he's not your best friend. And you know what, you guys, is really funny? People are always trying to recommend white men for me to crush on because I have this thing. And I don't know why Henry Cavill always gets mentioned. People are like, Henry Cavill, you should try Henry Cavill. I'm like, nah, he's fine. He's not Hugh Jackman. So anyway, because it's a celebrity portrait and there isn't anything beyond just copying the photo, that doesn't feel so original. And then a sketch like this is nice because I like seeing sketches, but again, it is something that is not your own original image. I'm not saying you can't paint St. Peter's Basilica and make it your own. It's just that there isn't a lot going on beyond a straightforward pen sketch. This one too is also a copy from a Hakusai block print. Here we have Van Gogh's Starry Night. We've got Looney Tunes. We've got Benedict. That makes me happy. This one seems like an original. There isn't anything in the caption that indicates who it is or what your connection is to that person. So there is a certain feeling of distance there that makes me less interested. I do like the technique, though. I think compared to the other stuff on your Instagram, the technique is quite good. I do think you need a background and to start thinking about contextualizing that. We've got Bernie Sanders, we have Benedict, we've got Michelangelo, Kiki's Delivery Service, Powerpuff Girls, and Aladdin. Yeah, there's a lot of copies on your Instagram, Varun. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that because copies are very helpful. They can really help you learn how to get good at shape and to analyze that. But the thing is, you don't want most of your Instagram to be copies. I would say, if anything, you probably want to put the copies into your highlights because then they're there, but they're not the primary part of your Instagram. And so what I would recommend doing, think about this piece as a reference for the direction you may want to push yourself in, because this is the piece where you are taking a well-known face, which is Snape. But the thing is, you're adding your own voice to it. Not everybody who draws Snape draws him like this. Whereas, for example, the image of Henry Cavill is fairly generic. I mean, I've seen a lot of pencil drawings of Henry Cavill. That's not anything new. This is something new. Nana says, I have a tiny stand for my smartphone so I can record process for reels without holding the phone. I love making process reels with music I enjoy. That is so helpful to have that stand, because I am noticing that in some of the videos that I saw at the top, it's pretty shaky in terms of us seeing the work. And I just think that it would really help you to be able to control that a little bit more. I'm sorry, I can't read your name. It's in, I think, Korean, who's asking, how can I share my account as well? Okay, if you want to submit your Instagram or your artist website to be considered for a free live YouTube critique, just go down to the video description below, and we do have the link there for the upload form where you can submit your work. Sweet Corn Art says, yes, and I suck at video editing. I can only make it in 1 to 2 format kinds. You guys, I have edited 1-minute videos that took like 5 hours. I'm not joking. It's incredible how hard it is to do video. And I think, unfortunately, people just don't see that. And they make the assumption that it's not a big deal to do it. And so what ends up happening is you get these really slapped together videos that honestly do more harm than good, because I would rather have an Instagram that has really good photos with no video than an Instagram that has some videos but that are really bad. I don't think you want to have that. Tom G says the Instagram algorithm is currently favoring Reels content to compete with TikTok. Oh, I know YouTube's doing the same thing. I mean, some of you may have seen, I've been rolling out some YouTube Shorts because YouTube Shorts is a new feature, and YouTube is the same way as Instagram. When they have a new feature and you use it, they tend to push you a little bit more on the algorithm. And YouTube is doing that to compete with TikTok. And so I can see the attraction to wanting to do video, but the thing is, it's not really worth it if you don't have the skill set, and it takes time. Learning how to edit video and do a good job, it's really hard. I mean, it took me years to figure it out, and I spent a long time doing it. I live with tech support, my husband, and it was still really, really hard. John Murph is asking, would you say that the content on Instagram should be treated as if it were a sketchbook? It depends on who you are. The reason I'm saying this to Varun is that he was very specific about asking for feedback. Am I creative enough? Do I have a strong voice of my own? I want to know if an objective person sees that in my art. And you can definitely treat it as a sketchbook, but not everybody does. Depends on what you want to do. But I would also say, Varun, looking at your Instagram, that I don't see your strong voice. I see it in this image, okay? But I think for it to really come across effectively on social media, you need to flip it. You need to have most of your work being like the Snape drawing, and then you can have some sketchbook pages and stuff filled in. I mean, I would say in general, John Murph, most people don't treat it as a sketchbook. Instagram tends to be a lot more curated than I think, say, TikTok, which is sort of a big dump of whatever. I mean, I think that's sort of the appeal for a lot of people in terms of TikTok, because it is not as heavily curated. Marta says, are interpretations of iconic characters from mythologies also considered, quote, copies rather than originals? Or do you just mean copies of already existing images and interpretations? Yes, that's what I mean. So for example, let's say you want to do an image of Zeus, who is the king of the gods from Greek mythology. There's no standard for how to draw Zeus. Everybody draws him differently. Whereas, for example, if we look at Dexter's Laboratory, that's a really specific character. There are not multiple interpretations in general of Dexter's Laboratory. You expect him to be drawn a certain way. Think about Zeus. You don't expect Zeus to be drawn a certain way, so that's quite different. Kei Fu says, just like skill can triumph over talent, creativity can be cultivated. Spend time imagining characters of your own and work from your own reference photos as a good test for creativity levels. Great advice. And I would say, like, if you look at Kat's Instagram, you can see it's all original. I don't even know if she has any master copies. I mean, it'd be fine if she had some, but I mean, I'm looking through her Instagram, it's all original. And that's a pretty big difference if you're thinking about wanting to work in the industry. Hello, hello, says Art Prof should make a video on TikTok. The platform's very interesting. I heard the reach is better on there. You know something? We have a TikTok, actually. It's Art Prof without the dot in the middle. I'll just put this into the chat. So our TikTok is Art Prof, if you guys want to take a look at it. And I had it sitting around for a really long time and never really had the headspace or time to look at it. But I'm doing it a little bit at a time. And now that we're doing YouTube Shorts, I'm also starting to put some of those in TikTok. So we'll see. I have no idea. I mean, I don't have a huge amount of time to put into that, unfortunately. I hope someday we'll have the budget to be able to hire a social media person. I mean, we have Mia Rozier who does it, but she's not full-time by any means. I mean, she only works a couple hours a month for us, and I wish that I could increase that a lot more. Okay. Let's take a look now at Manazzi, and let me read to all of you a little bit of background on Manazzi. And she says, I'm 14, high school student wanting to pursue fine art as a profession. I, for the most part, draw dynamic delineations and representations because I get exhausted doing realistic expressions. Manazzi says, majority of my works portray a story and a plot. I've made a large number dependent on friendly causes that I think should be featured in the general public. Long term, Manasi says that they want to feature and portray social causes through abstraction into round stories that impact individuals. Wow, Manasi, I cannot believe that you're 14 and you've got an Instagram, which is pretty substantial. I mean, if we go through just a quick scroll, this is a ton of artwork. And I think that's really remarkable that you've been so productive. And as I was saying earlier, I do really think that hard work matters more than whatever you want to say, talent. Maybe skill would be a better word to say, because you can have a lot of skill, but if you're lazy, forget it. You're not going to make it. You have to have both. And so, Manasi, I would say you have the ambition, you have the work ethic, and that is phenomenal, because if you have it this early, you're going to only get better at it as you get more experience and improve in terms of all those skills. And Manasi also says works of art to portray a story and a plot. Okay, I would say, let me go back to the top because I want to see the more recent work. Some of the pieces tell a story. I would say out of the images, the ones that stick out that for me tell a story, I'd say this one has a story to tell. I would also say this one feels that it has a story. This one as well. There's this narrative going on here. I'm going to guess this is supposed to be like a brain or something like that. And the other one's not as much. So I would really recommend, Manasi, if you really want your work to be more plot driven, to spend more time brainstorming as an artist, really getting specific about, okay, what is the story that I'm trying to tell? And how can I give an interpretation on that story that's going to feel original? I feel that this one does. Indian folk art painting, okay, but I would do the research. I mean, that's a really rich history that you're talking about. Like, this one obviously has a story as well. I mean, I'm not familiar with Indian folk art, but start reading those stories and get really specific, because what I'm seeing a lot in your Instagram right now is I'm actually seeing a lot of cliches. So this is a stream that we did a little ways back about how to identify cliches so that you can either ignore them or make it very deliberate and intentional, make it very obvious to the audience that you know it's a cliche, and therefore you're trying to do some play on it, okay? The cliches that I see going through your Instagram, the sunset with the silhouette, that's pretty cliche. A flower in the middle of the page. I would also say this one, the eye with like the dripping, I don't know if it's supposed to be mascara or something. I would also say that it's fine if you're doing a portrait of Billie Eilish. Actually, I confess I've been listening to a lot of Billie Eilish. I didn't think I ever would like her music, but it's a little bit hypnotic. I've been listening to a lot of her work recently. So anyway, I couldn't tell it was Billie Eilish. And if you want to tell stories, that's pretty important. If you're telling stories with somebody who needs to be recognized for the story to come across, is what I'm trying to say. And I would also say, going up, all right, so this is like a watercolor landscape, but it's very generic. I think landscapes can be so fascinating, but you need to find a personal connection to them. For example, when I did my travel tutorials, I was in Taiwan and China, Utah before I moved here. And it really makes a difference when the artist knows the place. Tell me in the chat, tell me some landscape that you have a personal connection to. Tell me where it is and what that connection is. And it's so different than downloading some random landscape off the internet, which is my impression that you don't have a connection to this. So I would really think about really making us feel that the work is more personal. Another thing about your post, just technique-wise, I don't know why you have these really wide white borders, but I would get rid of them because the issue with the white borders, you can see it here. This one's a little different because it's a grid, so you expect that. But you're missing a lot of very precious acreage because a lot of people, when they're looking at Instagram, they're not on a laptop, they're on a phone. And phones are fairly small. And so you want to maximize every square centimeter that you possibly can do. And so just get rid of all that white space. It's really not necessary. You should work on your photographs. Photographing artwork is hard. And I don't expect at the age of 14 that you're going to be a pro at that necessarily, but I do recommend watching our stream, How to Photograph Artwork. It's a long stream, but it's an important one that I think is necessary because I'm looking at this image. You have a lot of glare over here on the left-hand side. And I mean, paintings are a pain in the butt to photograph. So I feel you on that. It is not an easy thing to do. And a lot of your pieces, so not only do you have the glare, but there's like a lot of warping and wrinkling. So I don't know, Manasi, if you can afford to buy canvas boards or stretch canvases or even mat board or something like that would really help with that because like, especially here, I am seeing the wrinkling going on and it's a little bit distracting in terms of your image. Louise says, Clara, reliving her younger years. And hello says, Billie isn't within the genre I like, but her music is just so alluring. You know what's funny is like, I like her music, but I'm not really that into her whole image. And so as long as I don't have to look at her and watch her videos and stuff, it's fine. I know it's very judgmental. She's just not my cup of tea in terms of the whole image. Like I like the music as long as I can keep the music separate. John Murph says, would you recommend using many hashtags or a small amount? How many hashtags should be used per post? People have very different opinions on hashtags. My feeling is that you don't want the hashtags to overcome your text caption. So in this case, the text caption is so short. It's just a few words. And then there's this giant block of hashtags. And to me, you don't need that. And I would rather, when I'm looking at Instagram, I would much rather hear from the artist. I want to hear their voice. The hashtags, sometimes they get in the way. Also, Manasi, this is a lot of dots. I know people do that to separate the text caption and the hashtags. But the thing is, this is so much for people to have to scroll down. So I just don't think that's necessary. All right, let's take a look at some of the individual artworks and let me talk about the pieces that I think stand out. And I would give you the same advice that I gave Varun, that the fan art, like the Mulan piece, and I think there was another piece down here, like the Harry Potter piece. It's fine to do that stuff, but put it in the highlights. So that way it feels a lot more like the main bulk of your Instagram is your work. So I'm curious about this one because it's the only 3D piece. Gray pot made of shipcar, also known as air dried clay, for my succulent. Okay. I think it's cool you have 3D work. I might try to shoot at a different angle, and I might also not use the green mat that's on the floor because actually when I look at the photo, the most dominant shape is the green mat. And then the next thing is the succulent. And actually the last thing I look at is the pot. And you want to reverse that because the pot is your work. And so maybe having a smaller succulent or having a view where you can see more of the dimensionality, have a white background that's not going to take away from that. I mean, photographing 3D art is really, really hard. I'm not saying, again, that you should have this skill, but there's a couple simple things like that that you can take under consideration that are going to make that better. Jill says, I'm proud of you guys for putting your work out there in the first place. That's so brave. Oh, it's so hard. When you're 14 and you're not a well-established artist with tons of experience, it is brave. And oh, you guys, I am so glad I did not grow up with social media. I mean, I look at what teenagers are up against right now in terms of their social lives. And so it just terrifies me when I see how much of an influence it has. Who here grew up without social media? Let me know. And are you glad, like me, that you did not grow up with social media? I mean, we watched a lot of PBS and stuff like that, but we did not have all of the social media stuff to be dealing with. Sai says, I personally would use a bunch of hashtags if I'm starting an account to overcome the Instagram algorithm, but would kind of reduce it after some time. I understand that. And obviously, I mean, social media, it's sort of like a video game. I oftentimes feel on YouTube, I'm playing a video game. I have to run around, do all these things. Hopefully I find the gold coins somewhere. And a lot of the gold coins are hidden and you don't really know that they're there until you do a lot of research and find out. And so this is very tricky. And navigating these algorithms has nothing to do with you as an artist. It's like I said, it's a video game where there's no videos that tell you where to find all of the Easter eggs and stuff like that. HT Pokepack says, what do you think about having a separate account for fan art, one account for original work, but the same brand? You could. I mean, I think Instagram highlights is a fine place to put fan art because I find myself very overwhelmed trying to maintain so many accounts. So you could, but I feel that I would be a little bit spread too thin. I mean, I'm already spread too thin. All right, let's go back up here and take a look at the handle. I think, Manasi, the handle's a little bit complicated. And actually, I was typing in your handle in order to get ready for the critique, and I kept mistyping it. And I had to go back several times to make sure. I was like, wait a minute, where's the period? Where's the S? I actually had trouble with that. So you might recommend some handle that doesn't have so many dots. I think it's fine to have a dot, but when you have two, it actually becomes difficult for people to remember that handle. Okay, so this is all fine. Based in India, mixed media artist, commissions are open again. So a lot of people do this where they say commissions are open. That's fine. The only thing is, though, when I look at your Instagram, I don't know what you do for commissions. It's not clear because you don't have anything here that's labeled as a commission. And if I scroll through a lot of these, I'm trying to see if there's one that's maybe labeled as a commission. Yeah, I don't see any. And so one way to deal with that is if you have an Instagram highlight that's called commissions, then people can tap on that and go, oh, these are the types of things that you make. Because with commissions, you really need to know what somebody's going to do. I look at the work and you have a lot of different work, which is great. And I think it's wonderful. You're so prolific. But the thing is, I don't know if I commission work from you, is it going to look like this? Oh, wait, this one's commissioned. Okay, so that one's labeled, but like I had to go through a lot of posts to actually find that. I don't know if you do these as a commission. Commissions are hard. They are not easy to organize. They're not easy to get. And so you can definitely keep at it, but I think I'd really recommend having a highlight there. Catface Pudding says, I couldn't have a phone till high school. I'm so glad I didn't have the chance to post anything. You younglings have no idea. Who here remembers taking messages from your mom's friend? Oh, I hated that so much. Like taking phone messages and answering machines. There was no anybody's phone. It was just the phone. And remember, it was attached to the wall. This is in the olden days. Wheels says, guy here with a large Instagram, posting the most shareable content is the only way to go. Video content is what grabs attention. Companies are training us to just consume video. Video can attract attention, but like I said earlier with Varun's work, it can work against you. It can backfire. So just reconsider that. WC Lee says, dial-up modems were the norm. No social media back then. Who here can recite the... That's how you can tell how old people are. All right, let's take a look at the links. So I'm going to click on this. Okay, so like Varun, this is a personal account, and that's fine. But again, if I'm not your friend, then this is not very helpful to me because it's a private account and your friends probably already know. So I don't think you need to link to that. Let's see the other one. Okay, so all right, this is a photography Instagram. Okay. I think that's good. I think that the photography is so different than this account that to me makes a lot of sense to have a second account. Quick little thing about the account, even though this is not the one we're reviewing, I'm not a fan of watermarks. Tell me in the chat if you use watermarks or you think they're necessary. People put them there because they say, oh, I don't want people to steal my work. Guess what? If I wanted to Photoshop that out of your image, I could do that. I could also crop it out. I don't think anything protects you from that unless you literally post nothing online. And I wouldn't be here with your work if you really wanted to do that. Adam says, how about beepers? I remember in high school leaving my antique cell phone in the car, getting a page, having to use the payphone at lunch. Oh my God, the number of times I called collect because I didn't have a dime on me to make a phone call. Oregon Trail, hashtag, yes. I remember I always died of dysentery. In Oregon Trail, I never really got very far. Oregon Trail was this really old, wonky game. It was like the one computer game that we had in school, and we just spent hours and hours on it. So anyway, I think fine to link that one. And you do link to a YouTube channel, so let's take a quick glance at that. All right, let's look at the videos. Yeah, you only have one video, and that's fine. I'm not saying that's unacceptable, but I think if you have a channel that's not that active, I'm not so sure it's that necessary to link to the channel. What I would do instead is I would link to this video instead of the channel. Because oftentimes if I go to a channel and there's like one post, or if I go to Instagram and there's two posts, it makes me not want to click on it. So if you avoid me going to the channel page, instead I go straight to this video, that's a lot better. So I would link to that. Wheel says, best strategy for posts is a process video along with 6 to 8 additional photos in a post carousel. Video, let me just keep this playing. There we go. Video captures the attention. The additional photos keep people swiping and engaging. Yeah, it's great to have a carousel that does multiple things because then you don't feel like it's just the same thing over and over again. Hello says, I feel watermarks are pretty useless as well, unless they're well hidden or super big, which sadly detracts attention from the work itself. Yeah, I don't think it's necessary. Linda says, my social media was standing on the street talking with friends. Yeah, remember this? Also, remember when you would just disappear for several hours in the afternoon? Your parents were like, see you at dinner. And like nobody knew where you were. Oh, it was such a different time. All right. And this is a good process video. I think you did a nice job with this, Manazi. I mean, that makes me think, how many of you have a YouTube channel to show your process? And how many of you are maybe thinking about having one? Because I didn't even think about this, but maybe that would be a good critique, is critiquing somebody's art YouTube channel. Because I know there are a lot of people out there who want to do that. All right, let's go back to Manazi's Instagram. This sticks out too. Is this Manazi's work? It doesn't look like. Oh, okay. So it says the environmental artist. I would take this out. I think this would be better as a highlight. It's great to share other artists' work. I'm all for that. But it looks very odd in the context of your Instagram. First of all, it doesn't look like your work. Second of all, there's so much text. And so what I would just do, like if you want to have a highlight, maybe it's called inspiration and it's artists or people that you are very excited about that are artists. You could put them in a highlight. I think that would be fine. But really, the post should be about you. I don't think the inspiration stuff should be that important. Ira says, do you recommend posting art even when you're still in the early stages of your artistic journey? Not for selling art, but just sharing and getting feedback. I think it's fine, Ira, as long as it is not something you feel you should do. So if your approach is, oh gosh, everybody else is on Instagram, I better do it too, or I'm going to get behind. If that's how you feel, don't do it, because you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And it can actually really be harmful sometimes. Feeling that social pressure to put your work out there when you're not entirely comfortable with it, that's not a good feeling. In fact, what I would recommend, join our Discord. The link is in the video description below, because that's a way of sharing your work, but it's in a safer place because it's a smaller community. It's not Instagram where people have certain expectations for what they're going to see. And we're just awesome in the Discord. Tell Ira in the chat, if you're in the Discord, how nice we are in there and how supportive people are, and people are generous. So I would recommend doing that. And also, Ira, I don't know how old you are. I mean, I am sort of amazed, Manavzi, that you're 14 and that you have so much out there, because a lot of people who are 14 are not feeling that confident about their work at that point. WC Lee says, I started a YouTube channel, but editing the videos was too time consuming. Oh my God, you are preaching to the choir. I have 3 tutorials that are sitting around, and they've been there for way too long, but they're extraordinarily time consuming. Ezekiel says, I've been thinking of a YouTube channel since forever, but never got around to actually starting it. Catface says, when I'm done with school, I'm thinking about having a YouTube channel. Nana says, I want to have a YouTube for my process videos. Instagram is not good enough format for longer videos. Oh yeah, I mean, on YouTube, the audience is totally different. It is not the same thing, because YouTube is all video and Instagram is like photos with a little sprinkling of video. It's a very different audience. People have completely different attention spans on YouTube. UL says, yes, the Discord is great and the help can get you skills you didn't know about. Hello says, I love the Discord. I've been there for 2 weeks tops, but everyone has been really nice and quick to reply. Awesome. Victor says, have you talked about scale, letting others know about the size of the work? I have not. So let's go through some of Manavzi's pieces. And it looks like there is not information about scale. Sometimes I look for it in the text caption, but one thing that is helpful, like for example, this image, we see the pots. And so I can definitely tell how big it is. But you also write here in the text caption how large, but I find oftentimes to show scale, the visual is much more impactful than listing how big it is in the text caption. So sometimes things like if you have a drawing, you can put a hand in there or you put a pencil in there, and that's a nice measure of showing people how big that is. Thank you so much, Tom G, for the super sticker. We greatly appreciate your support. You guys are just helping us so much stay alive and up and running, because running this channel is a ton of work and it takes lots of resources to make sure that we don't have a payroll. Inert Matter says, should the purpose of an Instagram or YouTube be to sell your artwork? Can I possibly make a YouTube channel to make money from YouTube and use Instagram to help with exposure? It's up to you. I mean, some people, Instagram is for selling. That's the whole point of them being on Instagram. I'm on Instagram. I never sell stuff from my Instagram. I mean, I have an online shop on Etsy, but I suppose I could promote it more. It's just, I'm busy with so many other things that it's just not a priority for me. For me, Instagram has almost become a replacement for my blog, because I used to write a lot on a blog, but then I discontinued it because blogs sort of went out of fashion. And so now what I do on Instagram is I write pretty long posts. And so that becomes the blog post. So that's the way I use Instagram. Other people don't do it like that. Other people do want to sell. Other people have Instagram, but they sell once in a while. So it really, really depends. I will tell you guys, if you want to make a YouTube channel to make money, go do something else because you might make 10 cents an hour for a little while. I mean, people look at our channel and they go, wow, you guys have 95,000 subs. You must be raking in the money. I'm like, no, I think I probably make like $10 an hour for what we put in, probably less than that. I mean, it is obscenely hard to make money in terms of ad revenue on YouTube. And most people on YouTube have multiple revenue streams. So we have Amazon affiliate marketing, we have merch, we have an online shop for artwork that we make in live streams. We have Patreon, we have all kinds of things. And so I would say people just don't understand how much work YouTube is. It's a crazy amount of work. So it's not really worth it unless you have the time and the energy to really put that in. The other thing I would say, Manasi, first of all, you are so good at color. You're doing a great job there. And I think that's just wonderful. The one thing I would watch out for, though, in terms of your work, is settling in on a style too soon, because you do have a pretty good range of styles, but I do see you relying a lot on this type of style, which is the distorted portrait, very bright, saturated colors. And watch out for your compositions. A lot of your portraits, it's the exact same composition. And the ones that I think get more exciting are like this one. This one where you have the diagonal stripes, you have more going on in the background. This is a much better composition than, say, for example, this one, which is pretty much that same stereotypical, this is a portrait, put the head in the middle. So I'd work on composition, and I just would be very careful about trying to settle in on a style prematurely, especially because you're 14, okay? If you were much older and you were out of college and you were really trying to push a professional career, then I would say, yes, that's fine to start thinking about where you might want that to go. So I would recommend watching this stream, which is how to find your art style. And people think it's something you decide to do. It's not. A style should be something that develops naturally. It shouldn't be something that you force yourself to do, because the people I see that do that, they end up with work that's very contrived and oftentimes not good. So I just would be careful that you're not resting on your laurels there in terms of just relying on the same strategy all the time. You're young enough that I think experimentation would be very helpful to you. If you want that to be a little more contained, you could definitely put that into an Instagram highlight. Anthony says, do you recommend scanning or taking a photo of traditional art for posting? I think taking a photo is much easier. First of all, you need to have a scanner. Scanners are expensive. And also, if you have big artwork, you can't scan it. And so I would definitely keep that in mind. I would love it for all of you to join me in the Artcroft Discord. Oh, I'm sorry, not in Art-alongs. Sorry, it's supposed to be post live streams. I'll get in there and make sure everybody is in the right place. So post live streams, Discord invite link is in the video description below. Subscribe to our channel so you can continue to grow and develop as an artist. And a big thank you to our top Patreon supporters. You have really come through for us to provide all of the resources that we need to keep ArtProf up and running. We are so grateful to have your support. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.